Kia ora, and welcome to the Beer Jerk Beer of the Week Drink Along. I'm Luke, and this week we're drinking a beer from Sprig Fern. Special Belge is a pretty interesting historic beer style from Belgium, you've guessed it. And it's made from Sprig Fern. It's made by Sprig Fern. And if you know anything about Sprig Fern, you'll probably have heard of Tracy Banner, who is a living legend, frankly. She's been working in beer for about 40 years and just is one of the most influential and important people working in beer in the world really, but especially in New Zealand. So her story started in beer long before she was even allowed to drink beer. So Tracy left school at the age of 16 and she applied for a job at a local brewery. So she's from Liverpool and she got a job at Greenalls Brewery in Wellington. And she works in the lab there, so she was doing all sorts of testing, and I chatted to her about the size of Greenalls at that time, and their fermenters were 100,000 litres, which is quite incredible to think about. The beers that I brew at Small Gods, our fermenters that we use are about 1,200 litres, so just quite amazing to think about brewing batches that are 100 size bigger. So part of her job was testing the malts. So the trucks would get delivered early in the morning and they'd have to check them for moisture and just everything else really. And just one of the things that they do at those big breweries, for example, will be testing head retention. So you'd literally pour a beer from a package, so from a bottle or from a can, and get your stopwatch out and just see how long it took till the head collapsed in your beer. So all these really interesting things that are part of brewing at big breweries. So her story is kind of unique and it's quite different to the vast majority of brewers. So every week we chat about the stories behind everyone's different breweries and the founding story. And it's often a pretty similar story. It is of a bloke or some blokes, inevitably. Most craft breweries are started by men who were into home brewing, and then they decided to grow. Their friends liked their beers. They started making more beers. So it's really interesting that Tracy's story just came from her just getting a job when she was 16. It wasn't necessarily that she loved beer, but she definitely does love beer, and she's just as passionate about good beer as she was back then. I actually did record a podcast with Tracy for the Beer Jet podcast that's been on hiatus for the last year. So I think me and Matt should bring that back at some point soon. So probably about half a year ago, I did a really interesting interview with Tracy. And that's just been sat in the can, waiting for season 2 of the Beer Jet podcast to come out. So yeah, this is a good inspiration that I do need to get off my ass and edit that and record a few more podcasts. So I'll let you guys know when that does come out. But yeah, Tracy's journey, she's gone through, she worked at Bass in England, obviously an incredibly famous brewery. She moved to Lion when she moved to New Zealand, that massive brewery on Khyber Pass Road. She went down and worked at Speight. She was at Max. And at Max, she kind of, I don't know if she invented fresh hop with their Bruges beer, but was definitely involved with the real start of fresh hop beers in New Zealand, which obviously these days is such a huge thing and just an important thing that we all look forward to when the hop harvest happens in March and all the beers come out. It's so awesome. So she, I'm going to sip this beer, I'm getting dry. Tough doing these things by yourself. You don't get much of a gap to swig beer while someone else is talking. Anyway, so her involvement came with Tracy's involvement with the Sprig Fern started when she decided she wanted to live in Nelson, and the Sprig Fern was right next to where the hop gardens are, and it's where she wanted to live with her young family at the time. So she bought into a brewery that was called Tasman Brewery back then, and she quickly changed its name to the Sprig Fern. And after a few years of that, Tracy and her partner, husband, bought the whole thing out, so now they own the whole brewery. And there are 14 Sprig Fern taverns, which these days actually aren't owned by the family. They're owner-operated under a license agreement, which is a really smart business when you think about it, that you just, as a brewery, you've kind of got guaranteed customers. And that's been a very historic way of doing things in Britain, especially. If you look at pubcos like Fuller's and like Bass and Adnams, just so many of these traditional English breweries. They're more pubcos than they are breweries, I suppose. So it's a really unique and really interesting model, seeing how Sprig and Fern approach things. They've got a whole bunch of bars in Nelson. They've got, I think, 5 in Wellington these days. They've got one in Christchurch. So yeah, really cool way to get your beers out to your customers and really have a level of control over the environment and what's pouring. But anyway, this week we are drinking Spéciale Belge, which also has quite an interesting story. Going back to 1904 in Belgium. In 1904, locally brewed Belgian beers were under threat from pilsners from the Czech Republic and from Germany, from your English ales. So the Union of Belgian Brewers decided to have a competition at the University of Belgium. And in 1905, it was announced and launched at the, I think it was a World Fair, where they released this brand new style, which was Spéciale Belge, which is it's a top fermented beer, so it's an ale, unlike a pilsner. And originally it was super drinkable. It was a touch darker than a pilsner, and it sort of transmogrified and morphed into something very similar to what we're drinking now, and just became the classic beer in Belgium for decades and decades. And probably in the 60s and 70s, then pilsners did come back with a resurgence, and then I suppose Belgian breweries like Stella Artois became famous, and breweries like that. But so this style of beer almost died out in the 1970s, and there was probably just 1 or 2 breweries that were still making it, and it's in a bit of a resurgence in probably just the last 5 years, to be honest. There aren't many people making this beer, even in Belgium. There's a handful of breweries that have just kept going all the way through. So it's really nice that to see a New Zealand brewer making this. I think this is the only Spéciale Belge I've had in New Zealand. Also, I haven't talked about what the style actually is. So it's a top fermented beer, and it's I suppose it's easy drinking. It's normally about 5 or 6%. So perhaps a little bit boozier than the more sessionable beers, and it's got I suppose more of a nutty, round character. You've got a little bit of character from the yeast, so you can get some, I suppose, some clove character. I'm definitely getting clove character in this, which is really enjoyable. That goes nicely with the a bit of biscuitiness, bit of honey flavour. So it's a Belgian amber ale, I suppose. It's not quite as dark in colour as an amber ale, and it's really bloody delicious. It's not as, I don't want to say extreme, but it's not as heavy as a Belgian quad or as a triple. So it's definitely more in the wheelhouse of a Belgian blonde, but just, yeah, that bit more of a, yeah, biscuity, honey character to it. So it's a really nice combination of the lovely biscuity malt and the bit of sort of interesting phenolics in the Belgian yeast there, and quite gentle hop flavour. Yeah, just a nice, it's more for business than anything else. You're getting a bit of noble hop character. And interestingly, the Belgians at the moment, in the last few years, since Spéciale Belge has sort of come up on radars again, and more smaller breweries are taking it up. I don't know if it's yet regionally protected, but they're working towards the style being a regionally protected name. So like Lambic, or like Faro, or Creek in Belgium, or like Kölsch in Germany. You're not allowed to use those names outside of those regions. So we'll see how they get on with making this a bit more of a proud, regionally protected beer style. But it's yeah, it's a beer I'm really enjoying. So it's really cool seeing Sprig and Fern doing some of these interesting European style beers. Obviously, it's a brewery with a proud heritage from Britain and from Europe. They do some lovely hoppy beers, of course. You can't be a brewery in New Zealand and not do good hoppy beers, but I do enjoy the more the interesting lagers and European styles that do come out of Sprig and Fern. So really hope you enjoy this beer. All right, what other news do we have going on here? Do you know about the Beer Jack Run Club? This is the t-shirt I'm wearing for Beer Jack Run Club this week. Every single week on a Monday, we meet here at the Fridge and Flagon, a whole bunch of us. We run 5Ks at our own pace, and then we drink a beer or two afterwards. So when it's a public holiday, like Auckland Anniversary Day coming up, we Tuesdayize the run club. But it's yeah, it's good for your health, good for your mental health. It's a really nice social thing. So yeah, I started the run club probably 3 or 4 years ago because I hadn't done any exercise in about 15 years. And I still don't really enjoy running that much, but it is something that I look forward to, just catching up with friends, meeting new people, drinking a beer or two. So if your New Year's resolution is to get a little bit more active, get off the sofa, get your heart rate up, come along on Monday to the Fridge and Flagon, join us for our Beer Jack Run Club. Other stuff, we just took a shipment of modus operandi, or they're just called modus these days, out of Australia. Just landed here in the warehouse on Friday. So we bundled those up into mix packs and started shipping them on Friday. So we've got a limited amount of those. We've got a really fantastic Modus 6-pack that you should check out. That's, I think it's $50, and it's, yeah, got some really incredible beers in there. And Modus also are the people that have Naught Brewing. So they have 4 different non-alcoholic beers that are pretty brilliant. So we've put together a Naught 12-pack, so that's a mixed dozen. And we've got limited amounts of that in the web shop as well. So if you're doing dry January or you're just cutting out the booze a little bit, give those Naught beers a go. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this beer. It's a beer that goes really well with food. I reckon it will go well with like something like a roast chicken, maybe something on the sweeter side, like a sort of a fatty creme brulee. I think we'll go nice with this. I feel like I'll pair a cheese board or with the beers every week, but cheese boards do go well with most beers. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Sprig Fern. Keep up the good work. We'll see you here next week. Cheers.